Welcome to the Core Women Podcast, the place for women entrepreneurs, authors, and self-starters looking to build community and gain valuable insights through expert interviews with women at the top of their game. Join your host, podcaster, producer, expert coach, entrepreneur, and author, Dr. Summer Watson, as she aims to inspire and empower you through these candid conversations. Lean in and embrace the journey. It's time to start the show. Here's your host, Dr. Summer Watson.
Welcome to the Core Women Podcast. Today's guest is Ell Graniel, a neuroscience-based strategist, author, and founder of Truespeak. Ell brings decades of expertise in how the brain actually works, from the synapse and receptors to the reward center that drives our decisions, behaviors, and beliefs. With a background in business communication, neurolinguistics programming, and transformational meditation, she helps people rewire how they think, speak, and act so they can create sustainable, meaningful results. In this conversation, we will explore how our brains influence everything from decision-making to time and how shifting our internal language can unlock a completely different way of showing up in life and leadership. Welcome, Ell.
Thank you, Summer. And thank you for inviting me. I love spending time with you.
I'm so glad we get to share this space and time together. So before we delve into your professional journey, if you could describe your life to this point in one word, what would that word be, and why is that word important to you?
So currently, and this is a good thing, the word that popped into my mind was roller coaster. And the reason why that's a good thing is because I love roller coasters, and the scarier, the better. I love the drops. I love the spins. I'm just laughing. I have my hands in the air. If we get to go again, because it's kind of slow at the park, at the end of the day, we go again. And so I feel like that sums up my life in the sense that when we have what people call ups in the roller coaster, that's actually the boring part, the click, 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 click. And it's the downs that are like hands in the air. And in my case, it's like, well, I know I'm in God's hands. So always, right? Always good. And so since a lot has recently happened and since this new year, I'm definitely reminded that I love roller coasters and my life sometimes is very similar.
Wow. Well, I love that you love the roller coaster. You know, Ell, it's funny because taking off like in an airplane
hmm
or landing, but taking
hmm
off is always the most exciting for me. And they say
hmm
it's the most dangerous. And I'm like, but I absolutely love that feeling and that sensation. It's exhilarating to me.
hmm
And it's kind of like that click, click, click. It's kind of
Yeah.
like you're building up to it, right? And then once you get to that drop, it's like, woo! So I want to start with your journey because your journey is so unique and amazing. You spent years studying the brain at a deep level. What drew you into this work and how did it evolve into the approach you teach today?
What drew me into this work was probably fate. I didn't know what I was going to do, and I went to college just to get out of the trailer park and, figure something out. And I thought I wanted to be a shoe buyer for Nordstrom because I love shoes. So,
Love that.
so I ended up first with my AA in merchandising, and I learned how much math is involved in being a shoe buyer and spreadsheets, and it sucked all the joy out of it for me. And so
Really?
I thought
Math?
I thought I was just going to be able to go to fashion shows and and the marts and pick things and so anyhow, so I shifted directions a little bit. I coincidentally got caught up in the fitness world back in the 80s, the leg warmers and headband Jane Fonda days. I got pulled into that and loved it and ended up being a fitness director for 24 Hour Fitness. So went into the managerial world, but still was teaching classes for a really long time. Got married, had a family, a couple of children, all of that kind of stuff. And then while I was working for 24 Hour Fitness, I represented them at the chamber. I met this woman named Dr. Libby Adams. She founded now the International Academy of Self-Knowledge. She's all about neuroscience, and I was fascinated in NLP. She had courses in that, the Enneagram, personality type predictor. So all of this getting to understand people. And so I got connected with her and just started following her work and became a student of the International Academy of Self-Knowledge, got certified in transformational meditation, and like the rest is history. And now I'm a neuroscience nerd, but to be honest with you, the brain is huge. The brain is huge. I focus specifically on a part of the brain called the habenula, which
Hmm.
is really the reward center of the brain. And what's fascinating, I'm nerding out on you, but this is important. What's fascinating about the habenula is it's trainable. So when we say we want to stop eating fast food, but we go and we're like in the car going, well, we're training that part of our brain to go, we love this. We want more of this. This is good for us. Look how happy she is. But we're not. We don't put enough emphasis on, oh, look, I broke out. I've got pimples now. Oh, my stomach is upset. Oh, I'm in the bathroom for extra long time, right? Or, oh, I'm overweight, right? Those thoughts don't motivate the habenula. So what we want to do is we want to stop, say, eating fast food is to go, oh, look how great my skin looks today. Oh, look how healthy I feel. Oh my gosh, I'm down a couple of pounds. Gosh, it's so great that I don't want fast food anymore. Saying don't do it, that's a big leap. That I don't want fast food. So we can train it to then go, oh, we don't want that because we like the good skin. We like feeling better. And so that's the part of the rewiring that I help people with because it's challenging for someone to say, I no longer smoke cigarettes. That's too big of a leap. And so, what are the baby steps there? The baby steps are I want my nails to not be yellow anymore. I want to be able to taste food again. Like we just pick these little wins and we start training the habanul, and then it starts to find more of that for us, more
Mm.
opportunities. And then, of course, there was all the thing like dopamine, of course, and, cortisol, and all of that plays a role in it. But the habanula is so fascinating because it's the only part that's on the right hemisphere, the left hemisphere, and it's also split in the middle. So it really has a huge function in our brain for being so small.
Wow. The brain is so dynamic and it's
Hmm.
so complex. We are forever learning more about the brain.
Yeah.
As a doctor of clinical psych, one of my favorite parts is back behind in the bottom part of the brain, the amygdala and our fight
Mhm.
and flight response. So
Yes.
learning more about the habenula is so interesting. And then I also like the frontal lobe. And when things happen
Mhm.
and there's damage to the frontal lobe, how that impacts our behavior, our thinking, just so many things, right? So I love what you say about the habanula and rewiring and rewards and smaller steps. There's
Mhm.
so much to that. When we eat or when we are drawn to eating certain things, it does. It creates that dopamine, that serotonin. It creates those
Mhm.
happy neurons, so to speak. And so our synapses start snapping, we start getting, but we don't think about the after effects. Like you said, some of us get blemishes. Some of us start feeling, oh, bloated. In the moment, we're drawn to that. So rewiring to refocus, to think about the rewards differently is
Mhm.
so important and can be so helpful to so many. So you talk about the neuroscience behind decision making and why so many people second guess themselves.
Yes.
So, what is actually happening in the brain when we hesitate or doubt our choices?
And it's good that you brought up the amygdala in the fight or flight and
Hmm.
fawn and freeze. Well, I mentioned fawn because I just did a big article on this and some YouTubes. People aren't aware of the fawn response, and that's where you are a people pleaser to protect yourself from danger,
Yeah.
right? And so in decision making, we have fight, and that's when our ego is arguing with our higher power. We very often know what's best for us, but we don't do it. So the ego is one thing that gets in the way. And then flight is procrastination. So we think we want to do something. We're like, yeah, that's what I want. And then we don't do crap about it. We don't
Mhm.
take those next steps. We don't sign up for the course. We don't finish the bookwork or whatever. And then there's freeze. And that's what's known as analysis paralysis. We need way more information before we can make this decision.
Right.
And then we can make the decision. In this case, we keep reading the books, taking the workshops, asking other people questions so that we don't have to make the decision, because making the decision means a commitment. And people don't understand that it is okay to decommit. Decommitting has been put hand in hand with failure, and it's not the same thing. You don't know really what you want until you start going there. Just like I wanted to be a shoe buyer. I'm not a
Right.
failure because now I do what I do by any stretch of the imagination. I love what I do. And so second guessing ourselves comes from so many parts of the amygdala. It's all about fear. It's the fear of commitment.
I think many of us, because of our conditioning, because of some of the things that we've been brought up to learn, to understand a certain way, that when we decommit, we feel a sense of failure. And I'll
Mhm.
give you an example. When I was growing up, I thought, okay, here's the trajectory of my life. I'm going to go to high school, graduate, go to college. And then after college, I want to go to law school. Got into law school. And when I got there, as you said, once you get there and you start doing it, you're like, whoa, wait, hold on. I don't know if this is actually for me. So at
Mhm.
that point, I had to make some critical decisions because no one was paying for my education except for me.
Right.
Not a parent, not a grandparent, I was. And so I thought, well, is this for me? Is this going to fulfill my needs as I move forward? Is this a way I want to help people? And I realized it wasn't, but I felt like I was quitting. And I
Mhm.
thought, oh my God, I'm the first person to go to college. I'm the first person to graduate from college. I'm the first person to do this kind of thing in my family. They were so excited. Am I failing them? Am
Yeah.
I failing myself? And I
Yeah.
thought, I don't care right now. Like I had to be really strong, but it was something I really had to get over because I
Mhm.
thought, this is not going to make me happy. This is not where I want to place my passion, my purpose, my impact. I want to gain that in a different way. So how can I do that? And I made this U-turn and I went back home. And I had to
Mhm.
like live in that for a moment.
Yeah.
I had to
Yeah.
explain that. And I had to have the courage to do that. So
Mhm.
decommitting isn't quitting. It's just saying, maybe this is not the right step for me. Maybe there's a different step. But I also remembered in something that was conditioned in me too, which I think was a good thing with my dad. Early on, I used to love getting involved in things, but then I'd be like, yeah, I'm bored, right? And so it was like Girl Scouts. Then it was like tap dance, ballet, gymnastics.
Mhm.
And he's like, you got to stick to something. You got to stick to one of these things. So I had to think about that too and go, are you just getting up and not sticking to it? And I'm like, no, this is truly deep down in my soul. This is not for
Mhm.
me. So yes, we can decommit. And yes, it can lead to better things. It's gain wisdom that we can put towards our next step. So one of your core messages is that we can create new neural pathways that lead to more confident, actionable decisions. How does
Mhm.
someone begin to rewire their thinking in a practical way? Like, let's take me, for example. Let's take that instance, right? How was I able to rewire that? How was I able to
Yes.
see that?
And so this is all fascinating, right? Because none of this is scripted that we're talking about.
No.
And this loops back to the amygdala. Your brain perceived a threat. Once you just got there and like, whoa, whoa, whoa. So the fight kicked in, which gave you the courage to stand up to people. The flight kicked in so that you could go home. So some of those parts of the brain, so a threat in this time and day is no longer the saber-toothed tiger. It's having to make quick decisions and have them work out in our favor. And so your brain knew, oh, shoot, this is not what we thought. And it wasn't in alignment with your soul and your purpose. So there was a lot of incongruency going on in the neuroplasticity of your brain. So when you made that decision, you started to rewire. Soon as you said, this is not how I want to spend my resources, and time and everything, that set new energy in your brain in a certain direction. And so this is the important part. Once we decide, like say getting out of a bad relationship, that's great. And then what are the steps? Because you've got to keep moving, or we go back to homeostasis. The brain is hardwired to do what we know, even if it's not the best thing,
Hmm.
because we know it. That's why people go to the same fast food restaurant, even though they know the food is crappy, they can count on the crappy that they're going to get. It's the same kind of crappy, right? And so we can do that in relationships and stuff. So what happened with you was you made a decision, then you did the actions to support that decision. And you kept doing them and you kept doing them. And kudos to you, you kept doing them even though it was hard.
Yeah.
That's where people give up.
And I think that's why these conversations are so important because it also resonates with others who have been there or
Yes.
who are there now, who are
Hmm.
in those same positions or maybe similar positions where they don't know those first steps. What would you say when you're thinking about somebody who is in a personal situation that is causing conflict for them or hardship in regards to their thoughts, their emotions? What is the first step that they could take to move out of that homeostasis?
It's a three-parter
Okay.
because this is kind of the base work of clients that come to me, right? They're torn. So when people first come to me, they go, I don't want to be in this soul-sucking job anymore. Okay. What do you want? And silence. So the first step is, what do you want? Again, you're training the Habanula. What do I want? Not what do I not want?
Hmm.
And so then that follow-up question to once you can decide that, like say, well, I don't want to be here anymore. Okay, well then how can you achieve that? So how can you achieve not being there anymore? So how? And then the third most important one is the who, and who can help me? Who do you know who's done this before successfully? Who do you know that you can talk to about this so that it's not spinning around in the hamster wheel of your brain, causing sleepless nights and migraines and stuff, right? So, what do I want specifically? How do I get there and who can help me? And that will totally shift your perception. That's how what we people think of coincidences or serendipity. That's how you overhear somebody saying something. You're like, oh my gosh, I was just thinking about that or talking about that. Or that's how somebody will have a billboard up on the highway hiring for something that you've always passioned about, but it's
Right.
not until you open the reticular activating system, right, that keeps what we can only consciously be thinking of, it puts new stuff on that plate. So everything we always want and always need is always there. We've got to be wanting it and not just lip service, desire.
Right. Well, you talked about the do, how, and the who. So you also challenge the idea that we have the same 24 hours in a day.
Yes.
What do you mean when you say time is a construct, and how can people start to shift their relationship with time?
Yes, this is a big one. So, time is a construct. Let's start there because to me, it's the easiest one. It means that if I'm working on something I don't enjoy, so like say it's time to sit down and start working on my taxes, that's the longest hour of my life. And that's just scratching the surface, right? It seems like 3 hours. Whereas when I was planning a trip to meet my family at Disneyland, that was an hour that seemed like 20 minutes.
Yeah.
So that's how time is a construct. It's about our perception of how we're moving through it, decides how we feel it, right? So
Mm-hmm.
there's that. And then the other thing is, we all don't have the same 24 hours in a day. The more affluent you are and the more privilege that you have more time in the day because you probably have a car. You don't have to take public transportation.
Mm-hmm.
You probably have a housekeeper or some kind of support with the kids that other people don't. You probably have enough money to not have to have two jobs. So you have a weekend, you have nights. So we all don't have the same 24 hours in a day in that respect. We all don't have the same opportunity for 8 hours or 6 hours of sleep. We all don't have the same opportunity for free time. And so that's what I mean by we all don't have the same 24 hours in a day. We do technically, the clock ticks for us all the same. But how we feel and perceive that time varies wildly.
I get that. It absolutely does. Now, that's an interesting perspective because that gives more clarity to the idea of
Yeah.
we technically have 24 hours, but how those hours are spent looks very different for each of us. And it also gives perspective to those out there thinking, well, they've got 24 hours. Why aren't they spending it in such and such a way getting to work? Right. And we can make it that simple, but sometimes it's not that simple.
Right.
And it's interesting that you mentioned that maybe somebody has to take the bus, right? And when I was a kid, I went to school out of a district. So I didn't have a parent who took me to school. I didn't have an actual school bus. I had to take two city buses to get to school, which took me an hour and a half, hour and 40 minutes, and two city buses
Mhm.
home, which took me
Mhm.
that same time. So I was commuting for about 3 hours a day
Yeah.
as a young kid, right? So then I knew my time construct had to be totally different. So if I wanted to get into exercise, I wanted to get homework done, and thank goodness my mom worked a swing shift. So she would start work at 3:30 and wouldn't get home till 11. So I was one of those latchkey kids, and it was up to me to determine what happened within that construct, and I got it done. So with it said, you talked a little bit about neuro-linguistic programming already, but let's get back there. Your work is in NLP,
Mhm.
again, neuro linguistic programming, which focuses on how language shapes outcomes. So, how are our words working against us without us realizing it? And what does it look like to have language that actually supports what we want?
Such a good question. And the biggest thing is number one, pick one thing and become aware that you want to make that change. So the first thing is we spend a lot of time saying what we don't want. I hope it doesn't rain. I hope they're not late, the negative things, which then puts our mindset, our vibration, because we are energetic. Heart math proves, scientifically proven, that our energy carries a minimum of 6 feet from us. So our energy matches others' energy. So when we have expectations for things going wrong, more things can go wrong because we're matching that energy. Then you say, well, what do I want? So catch yourself saying, hey, kids, don't forget your lunch. I mean, remember your lunch. And so you start shifting and you stop saying those things that you don't want. I've been doing this over 30 years and I'll catch myself saying, I hope I don't, whatever it might be. And then I'll say to myself, well, what do you want? I'm talking to my own self. So I
Right.
coach my own self still, even after 30 years. So I want people to understand it's a process, right? And there goes that homeostasis because before I started doing this, I had already been 35 years into saying what I didn't want
Yeah.
during the real formative parts of the brain. So changing this. So that's one. Say what you want instead of what you don't. And then the second one that's super fun and a huge challenge is to stop saying but. Yeah, but. Yeah, but it breaks down communication. It's confrontational. It's monofocused. And so you say and instead. Yes, and somebody says something, and then you say, and I heard this instead of saying, yeah, but, you say yes, and meaning heard, and then you say, and I heard, and now you're going into your side and they're not as confrontational. You haven't thrown up the butt wall. So that one's a big one. And there are times to say but because you mean this or that. There's a but and so see, I just caught myself in it. It's that easy. And then here's the secret sauce. While you're doing this, stop saying, oh, I can't do this. Oh, there I go again. Oh, this is so hard. Just know it's a process and instead go, yay, me. Oh, I just caught that. Oh, good. I'm getting better at this. So give yourself grace in positive thinking and being aware of your big butt.
Oh, that's going to help us remember. Right? All right. Couple last questions. So,
Okay.
your YouTube, talk about your YouTube page.
Hmm. I love my YouTube channel. I've been posting there for years. I have hundreds of bits of information there, and they're all bite-sized pieces. They're all 12, 15 minutes long. And it's because I realized that when I would talk to people, and I'm so passionate and I love what I do, and I would see the glazed eyes, like, you've lost them.
Yes.
And that's when I realized it needed to be bite size. And so my channel switched from being like 20-minute segments to 12-minute segments. So I put everything there. So I just had fight, flight, freeze, fawn, instead of being one segment on how the amygdala processes threats. whereas that would have been my old way of thinking. So it's all about neuroscience, but at a very actionable level.
Yeah.
I don't even want to say like it's neuroscience for dummies. It's not. I'm just not using the medical terms because that doesn't matter. What matters is how do we get the result we want? Those actions don't have medical terms. Like procrastination. Is that a scientific term? No, I don't think so. It's an action that we all can be working on. And so I just love it. I like sharing those little bits of information. I like getting camera ready. I get my little umbrella out because I'm older, right? So all these things are super fun and exciting to me. So basically, you can find anything there from getting over procrastination, getting over fear of job interviews, like just tons of things. Anything that you don't want anymore, you can
Right.
go there, but it'll be harder to find like, how do I not? So you might want to go there and go, what do I want? And then look,
Right.
because that's how I think. So that's where they are, right?
And that's a great place to start, Elle, in relation to what do I want? Not what don't I want, but what do I want? And that's
Hmm.
a great both cognitive shift as
Yes.
well as like a physical shift. I'm going to Elle's Truespeak channel so I can better understand what I do want. That is huge. For a lot of people, to speak in the negative is something that has become conditioned within them. So
Yes.
to make that small shift, that's a big deal. So, all right. My last question is for someone listening who feels stuck in overthinking, time pressure, or self doubt, what is one simple shift they can make this week to start working with their brain instead of against it?
This one is so simple that people don't do it, or they do it once and they said, well, I tried that and it didn't work. So they'll keep doing something that's not working because they tried something different one time and it didn't work. So it's this simple. Whatever it might be, sit down with the intention, close your eyes, start breathing mindfully, bigger, deeper, slower, and ask your brain, what do I want? What do I want? What do I want? And then the follow-up questions, and how do I get there and who can help me? So here's a little kind of an analogy. So say you're 5 years old and you want licorice. So your mom's, okay, yeah, you can have licorice. You're so excited you're getting licorice. So you're walking through the candy store and you're walking by all this stuff. And you're like, oh, but I want the giant gumball. Oh, but I want the gummy bears. And then your brain's like, you're here for the licorice. So you're already being conditioned at a young age, like, all of this is available to me, but I can't have it.
Mm.
So what you're doing is you're asking your brain, what do I want? I thought I wanted the licorice, but now I see gumballs and gummy bears, and I think I'd like to try something else. So that's what slowing down and closing your eyes, breathing gets more oxygen into your bloodstream, more oxygen in your brain, which gets you into the alpha level of consciousness. In the alpha level, the ego takes a back seat for a little bit and you get a clearer connection. And just allow it. Don't set a timer. Don't say it's 3 breaths. So what do you want? You want to just allow it. How do you breathe? How big of a breath would you like to be taking? Because it's all about you. You're such a walking, talking, breathing miracle. Begin to live that way.
Mm. I love that. Thank you, Elle, for joining me on the Core Women podcast today.
My pleasure. I'm so looking forward to more time together, Summer. I'm glad we're reconnected.
I know this was so much fun. If you'd like to connect with Ell Graniel, you can do that by going to LinkedIn or ellgraniel.com. And you can also find her YouTube channel at Truespeak featuring Ell Graniel.
Thank you for joining us on the Core Women podcast with Dr. Summer Watson. We're so glad you're here and would love to connect more with you. Find us on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube at Core Women, and on Twitter at Core Women 1. For more about Core Women and Dr. Watson, visit corewomen.com. Want more support and resources for amazing women like you? Great! Join Dr. Watson and Jen Fontanilla at the Life, Love, and Money Collective, a Core Women production that aids in understanding the key traits that might be getting in the way of living a life that you are absolutely passionate about. Connect with Summer and Jen and find out more at thelifeloveandmoney.com.